Have you ever caught yourself scrolling through social media for hours, watching others achieve what you desperately want, while you sink deeper into that hollow feeling that everyone is moving forward except you? That gnawing sensation isn't just uncomfortable, it's the silent assassin of your potential. The truth most aren't ready to hear is this: every second you spend obsessing over someone else's journey is a second stolen from your own. Has this ever happened to you? You witness someone's success, perhaps a promotion, a business breakthrough, or even something as simple as recognition, and rather than feeling inspired, you feel diminished? This comparison trap is the most elegant prison ever built, because we voluntarily walk inside and lock the door behind us. What you're about to discover might surprise you. The path to becoming truly exceptional has nothing to do with others, and everything to do with your relationship with yourself. The most powerful individuals throughout history understood a fundamental truth: external validation is a mirage that keeps you thirsting while never truly satisfying. The world doesn't watch you to help you rise. It watches to categorize you, to place you neatly in a box that makes sense to them. But there's a certain kind of power that emerges when you stop performing for an audience and start building for yourself. Stay with me until the end, because this shift in perspective doesn't just change how you approach your goals, it completely transforms who you become in the process. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The most counterintuitive aspect of personal power is this: the pain you're desperately avoiding is actually the forge that will shape you into something remarkable. Every person who has ever achieved greatness first walked through fire. They endured humiliation, doubt, betrayal, and failure. But here's what separates them from the ordinary. They didn't just survive these experiences, they extracted their power from them. When you begin to see obstacles not as punishment but as necessary resistance, the very force needed to strengthen you, everything changes. Your rejections become redirections, your failures become feedback, your pain becomes purpose. This isn't motivational fantasy, it's the psychological foundation of exceptional achievement. What if you stopped seeking approval and started seeking advancement? What if, instead of measuring yourself against others, you measured yourself only against who you were yesterday? This relentless internal focus doesn't just build skill, it builds something far more valuable, an unshakable sense of self that no external circumstance can diminish. The journey we're about to embark on isn't comfortable. In fact, it's designed to challenge everything you thought you knew about success and self-development. The world is filled with noise, telling you to seek validation, to compare, to compete. But what if the true path to becoming extraordinary requires something else entirely? What if the secret isn't in being seen, but in seeing yourself clearly for the first time? The hidden truth most never discover is that real power isn't in what you say, but in what you do consistently, relentlessly, without needing to narrate every step of your journey. Think about the most influential people in history. Did they spend their time convincing others of their vision, or did they simply build it? There's a profound difference between someone who explains why they deserve success and someone who silently demonstrates it through undeniable results. Your personal transformation begins the moment you stop justifying your path to those who haven't earned the right to understand it. This mindset shift changes everything. When you no longer feel compelled to defend your decisions or seek approval for your ambitions, you reclaim countless hours of mental and emotional energy that can be redirected toward actual progress. The world has a peculiar way of respecting those who don't beg for recognition. those who build in silence until their achievements speak so loudly they can't be ignored. But this journey requires facing an uncomfortable revelation. The world doesn't reward good intentions or noble dreams. It rewards those who see reality clearly and act accordingly. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. His writings weren't meant for those seeking comfortable illusions, but for those brave enough to see the world as it truly is. The impact of operating from reality rather than wishful thinking can't be overstated. When you strip away the comforting narratives and face the raw truth of human nature and how systems actually function, you gain an immediate advantage over those still living in fantasy. Behind the scenes of every extraordinary achievement is this fundamental acceptance that we must navigate the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. This doesn't mean becoming cynical, it means becoming clear-sighted. It means recognizing that the rules of the game aren't always fair, that merit isn't always rewarded, and that sometimes the path forward requires strategic thinking rather than blind optimism. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what might be the most critical element of personal power, emotional mastery. The truly powerful don't react to provocations, they record them. They don't lash out when insulted, they take notes. This emotional discipline creates an almost mystical aura around those who possess it. When everyone else is reactive, the person who maintains composure commands the room. Your greatest leverage in any situation isn't in your immediate response, but in what you choose to reveal or conceal. The space between stimulus and response, that precious pause where most people surrender their power, is where the exceptional forge their advantage. This isn't about suppressing emotions, but about directing them with precision, like a master craftsman wields a tool. The willingness to advance alone, guided by your internal compass rather than external validation, distinguishes the extraordinary from the ordinary. It's in those moments of solitude, when no one is watching or applauding, that your character is truly formed. If something in this message resonates with your experience, write "silent power" in the comments below. Now let's explore how this principle of emotional mastery extends beyond personal interactions and into every domain of life. This principle extends into something even more fundamental: detaching from the endless noise that surrounds us. In today's hyper-connected world, we're constantly bombarded with opinions, judgments, and distractions, a cacophony that drowns out our deepest insights. The revelation that changed my own journey came when I realized that true influence doesn't come from being the loudest voice in the room, but from being the most deliberate. Think about those rare individuals who speak only when it truly matters, how everyone leans in to listen. Their words carry weight precisely because they're not freely given. This strategic silence creates a fascinating paradox. The less you explain yourself, the more people want to understand you. It's a psychological principle that plays out in boardrooms, relationships, and every human interaction. The watershed moment in personal development occurs when you stop explaining and start executing. This shift triggers one of two responses in others. They either begin to fear your quiet confidence, or they're drawn to follow your lead. The beautiful truth is that both outcomes serve your ultimate purpose. Let them talk while you build in silence. Let them doubt while you steadily advance. Let them envy your progress while you continue to evolve. But this journey of detachment requires mastering what might be our greatest internal battlefield, our emotional landscape. Consider this hidden truth that few will ever tell you. Emotion is the invisible leash that keeps ordinary people controllable and predictable. Those who master their emotions will inevitably command those who can't. The most influential leaders throughout history weren't necessarily the most intelligent, they were the most emotionally disciplined. This isn't about becoming cold or unfeeling. That's a common misconception that leads people astray. Rather, it's about developing the discernment to choose when to feel and when to strategically harness what you feel. The difference is subtle but profound. Someone who suppresses emotions becomes brittle. Someone who channels them becomes unstoppable. The mind-altering practice that accelerates this transformation is learning to observe your emotions with scientific detachment. When rage rises within you, can you step back and study its contours without being consumed by its fire? When fear grips your chest, can you examine it with curiosity rather than surrender to its demands? This is the inner alchemy that turns emotional triggers into strategic advantages. If you want more content like this, that focuses on personal mastery and strategic thinking, hit that subscribe button now. I share these powerful insights regularly, and subscribing ensures you won't miss any of these life-changing principles. Think of it as creating an observatory tower within your mind, a quiet space from which you can witness the storms of feeling without being swept away by them. When emotion rules unchecked, logic dies. And when logic dies, you hand victory to whoever or whatever provoked you in the first place. The most powerful individuals feel deeply but reveal strategically, creating an impenetrable armor that few can penetrate. If you recognize this pattern of emotional reactivity in your own life and are ready to transform it, write "Observer Mind" in the comments. Now let's explore how this emotional mastery becomes the foundation for something even more powerful, becoming completely unreadable to those around you. The journey toward true power begins with mastering your external presentation, becoming what some might call unreadable. This is perhaps one of the most underrated skills in our oversharing. In culture, consider how much information you unconsciously reveal through micro-expressions, tone shifts, and nervous habits. Each of these tiny betrayals creates a map that others use to navigate and sometimes manipulate your responses. The blueprint for transformation starts with something deceptively simple: conscious control of your face, voice, and time. Every moment you spend justifying your choices or explaining your reasoning is a moment stolen from your true mission. It's not just about lost productivity. It's about the subtle power dynamics at play. The world constantly watches for weakness, for cracks in your armor that can be exploited. This vigilance isn't paranoia, it's reality. Human interaction is built on these subtle power exchanges, whether we acknowledge them or not. I discovered this revelation during my own journey when I noticed how differently people responded to me once I stopped immediately reacting to provocation. When tested through insults, betrayal, or temptation, the instinctive response is emotional. But what if instead you simply smiled, observed, and learned from every encounter? This single shift in behavior creates a fascinating psychological impact on those around you. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the magnetic pull of mystery. The most compelling truth I've discovered is that power rarely lies in what you reveal, it's in what you strategically withhold. In a world where oversharing is the norm, selective disclosure becomes a rare and valuable currency. The less people know about you, the more they project onto you. Their hopes, fears, and interpretations fill the gaps you intentionally leave. This principle creates a form of social leverage that can't be purchased or faked. Indifference, not cruelty, but a calm detachment from outcomes others are desperately attached to, becomes strangely magnetic. People are drawn to what they can't easily categorize or control. The individual who maintains composure during chaos naturally stands out as exceptional, someone operating from a different paradigm altogether. Have you ever noticed that in any room, the quietest person often commands the most genuine attention? Not the loudest or most flamboyant, the one who speaks rarely but with purpose. This isn't coincidence, it's human psychology at work. We value what's scarce, and thoughtful restraint has become increasingly rare. Perhaps the most powerful alchemy in personal development is learning to transform provocation into power. When life tries to provoke you through criticism, rejection, or unfairness, remain silent. When emotions claw at your throat demanding expression, breathe and center yourself. When others expect you to react dramatically, give them nothing but your composed presence. The truth behind this principle is that the calmest individual always prevails in any exchange, because everyone else reveals their hand while the composed one remains a mirror, reflecting others' emotions while concealing their own. This creates an asymmetry of information that naturally shifts power toward the composed. If you've experienced the power of staying calm when everyone expected an emotional outburst, write "composed power" in the comments. Let's now examine how strategic isolation becomes not a punishment, but the fertile ground where your greatest strengths take root. This fundamental understanding leads us to what might be the most counterintuitive revelation on the path to personal power, the strategic value of isolation. Our culture has conditioned us to fear solitude, to see it as punishment rather than opportunity. But consider this perspective shift. Isolation isn't loneliness, it's refinement. While society constantly pushes for connection, collaboration, and visibility, the untold secret is that virtually every empire, innovation, and masterpiece was conceived in strategic silence. The watershed moment in any journey of transformation occurs when you willingly separate yourself from the collective, not forever, but for crucial periods of focused development. It's in this deliberate separation that something remarkable happens. You begin to hear your own mind clearly, perhaps for the first time. The constant chatter and influence of others' expectations, opinions, and ideas creates a background noise so persistent we barely notice its impact on our thinking. When that noise fades, the clarity that emerges can be startling. Your authentic voice, that unique perspective and vision that only you can bring to the world, finally has space to emerge. This is where true originality and power begin to take root. The greatest creators, leaders, and visionaries throughout history understood this principle. Breakthroughs happen in the quiet. Yet this isolation, valuable as it is, requires something more to become truly transformative. This brings us to a critical distinction that separates those who achieve lasting success from those who merely show potential, replacing motivation with discipline. The blueprint most people follow is fundamentally flawed. They rely on motivation, a fleeting, emotional state, to fuel consistent action. But motivation, by its very nature, abandons you precisely when you need it most. Discipline is the weapon that functions regardless of how you feel. While motivation fades when comfort whispers its seductive invitation, discipline continues through discomfort, resistance, and doubt. It doesn't negotiate based on your emotions. It commands action, regardless of your mood. This isn't about forcing yourself into misery. It's about developing a relationship with action that transcends your momentary feelings. When you train both your body and mind with this consistent discipline, something remarkable happens. They begin to surrender to your will rather than the other way around. Your physical and mental capacities expand beyond what you previously thought possible, not through dramatic leaps, but through the compounded interest of consistent practice. But perhaps the most profound revelation comes next. Isolation is where you finally meet your demons, and discipline is how you defeat them. Most people spend their entire lives running from their inner darkness, their fears, insecurities, traumas, and shadows. The truly powerful take a different approach. They walk straight into this darkness with eyes wide open. They don't merely acknowledge these aspects of themselves. They dissect, them understand them, and ultimately transform them into fuel for their journey. If you've experienced the clarity that comes from strategic solitude, write "powerful silence" in the comments. Now, let's examine how guarding your access becomes the critical next step in your transformation. Through this journey of transformation, you'll begin to recognize a profound truth that few ever grasp. Your time and energy aren't just resources, they're the primary currency of your existence. A person who achieves greatness reaches a pivotal moment when they realize they must guard these resources with unwavering vigilance. This revelation often comes after years of giving them away freely, only to wonder why their dreams remain perpetually out of reach. The mindset shift that changes everything is understanding that access to you, your attention, your presence, your mental bandwidth, must be earned, not freely given. This isn't about becoming arrogant or inaccessible. It's about recognizing your intrinsic value and setting appropriate boundaries around it. Behind the scenes of every extraordinary achievement is this fundamental practice: the elimination of distractions, the avoidance of meaningless interactions, and the strategic denial of immediate pleasures that compromise long-term vision. Each time you say no to something that doesn't serve your purpose, you say yes to becoming more focused, more disciplined, and ultimately more untouchable. This decision, architecture, choosing carefully what you allow into your sphere of attention, becomes the invisible foundation upon which all visible success is built. This guarded approach naturally leads to one of the most counterintuitive principles of lasting achievement: building in private. There's a powerful alchemy that happens when you retreat into yourself, working diligently on your skills, your mindset, and your vision without the constant need for external validation or recognition. The journey of personal mastery requires this sacred space where you can fail, adjust, and grow without the distorting influence of others' opinions. The revelation that changed my perspective forever was recognizing that the loudest individuals, those constantly sharing their goals, broadcasting their process, and seeking affirmation at every step, typically fail first. They disperse their energy through constant external focus, while those who work in silence, who channel all their resources inward, are the ones who ultimately conquer. True power doesn't announce itself prematurely. It reveals itself through undeniable results that speak louder than any declaration could. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what might be the most sophisticated dimension of personal power: mastering the laws of perception. The hidden truth that most never grasp is that power isn't just about internal strength or capability. It's equally about controlling how others perceive you. The person who shapes the narrative ultimately controls the game, regardless of objective reality. Even the most intelligent, skilled individual remains invisible without understanding the subtle art of influence. You can possess extraordinary talent, but if you can't shape how others perceive that talent, its impact will be severely limited. This isn't manipulation, it's strategic communication. When you learn to control how others see you, you indirectly control how they behave toward you, creating a ripple effect that extends far beyond the immediate interaction. If you've noticed how differently people respond to you based solely on how you present yourself, write "perception power" in the comments. Let's explore how becoming a strategic mirror creates an almost magnetic influence in every interaction. This mastery of perception naturally evolves into one of the most sophisticated skills you can develop: becoming a strategic mirror in your interactions. Consider this revelation. While most people are frantically trying to express themselves, the truly powerful are observing, adapting, and reflecting. This mirror-like quality, revealing very little about yourself while accurately predicting others, creates an immediate asymmetry in every encounter. The moment others can read your thoughts, intentions, and emotional state, is the moment they gain the ability to manipulate you. This isn't paranoia, it's strategic awareness. The blueprint for transformation lies in learning to become a reflective surface that shows people precisely what they need to see in any given moment. When interacting with someone insecure, you might reflect just enough validation to gain their trust while studying their decision patterns. With the arrogant, you might momentarily allow them to feel superior, using their ego as a window into their vulnerabilities. Behind the scenes, this reflective stance gives you time to observe what others unconsciously reveal, their fears, ambitions, and blind spots. While they see what they expect to see in you, you're gathering invaluable insights that inform your next move. This is the essence of strategic interaction. Not manipulation for its own sake, but clarity about the human dynamics at play. The catalyst that amplifies this power is learning never to react to insults, provocations, or attempts to destabilize you emotionally. Every reaction you provide gives valuable data to whoever is testing your boundaries. The person who remains calm when insulted creates an almost eerie effect. Their composure becomes unnerving because it can't be provoked, and their silence feels like judgment rather than weakness. This is where the journey takes an unexpected turn. You begin to master the delicate balance of being friendly without becoming familiar, present without being predictable. You create natural curiosity around your occasional absence rather than constantly seeking to be seen. This measured approach generates an almost magnetic pull. People become more interested in someone they can't easily categorize or influence. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the transformative power of verbal economy. The hidden truth is that your words carry weight in direct proportion to their scarcity. When you appear in any context, professional or personal, speaking less and saying only what genuinely adds value creates immediate distinction. Those who chase attention through constant talking eventually become servants to it, while those who strategically withhold become masters of the space they inhabit. The revelation that changed everything for me was understanding that communication isn't about quantity, but quality. Every unnecessary word dilutes your impact. Every rushed response diminishes your power. Learning the art of the delayed response, those few thoughtful seconds of consideration before speaking, signals to others that your words emerge from depth rather than impulse. The subtle skill of smiling while calculating, of nodding while planning your next move, creates a presence that commands respect without demanding it. If you've noticed how much more weight your words carry when you speak less, but with more intention, write verbal power in the comments. Let's explore how true influence comes not from forcing your will upon others, but through the subtle art of orchestration. This strategic approach to communication reveals a profound truth about influence that most never grasp. True dominance isn't achieved through aggression or force. It emerges through masterful orchestration. The most sophisticated leaders throughout history understood that crushing opposition creates resistance, while guiding people toward conclusions they feel they've reached independently creates willing allies. This subtle distinction marks the difference between temporary compliance and lasting influence. The transformation happens when you shift from demanding to suggesting, from ordering to inquiring. Consider how differently people respond when they believe an idea originated in their own mind rather than being imposed from outside. There's an almost miraculous shift in their enthusiasm, commitment, and execution. This isn't manipulation. It's understanding human psychology and using it to create alignment rather than resistance. The revelation that changed my entire approach to leadership was recognizing that the highest form of control isn't control at all. It's inspiration coupled with strategic direction. When you plant seeds of thought rather than dictating outcomes, people not only choose what you've already decided is optimal, they champion it with a conviction no external pressure could ever generate. This orchestrated influence requires something that can't be faked or manufactured overnight: a carefully cultivated reputation. Your reputation functions simultaneously as armor against attacks and as a weapon that advances your position without you having to be physically present. It's the shadow you cast, the impression that precedes you, the story others tell about you when you're not in the room. The mindset shift that protects this invaluable asset is understanding that real power can afford silence in the face of gossip or criticism. Truth requires no desperate explanation or defense. When your capabilities are genuine and your strategy runs deep, you don't chase outcomes or frantically respond to every challenge. You simply continue, executing your vision while distractions burn themselves out against your composed silence. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the fundamental difference between those who merely react to circumstances and those who create them. Most people approach life like a game of checkers, focusing only on the immediate move, reacting to what's directly in front of them, thinking one-dimensionally. The exceptional few play chess, anticipating several moves ahead, understanding the entire board, and positioning pieces strategically before their significance becomes obvious to others. This strategic foresight allows you to move like smoke through any environment, visible yet somehow untouchable, respected yet ultimately unpredictable. While the majority exhaust themselves playing simple games of reaction, offended by every slight, distracted by every novelty, derailed by every obstacle, you operate from a higher vantage point, seeing patterns and possibilities invisible to reactive thinking. The journey toward personal power reaches a new dimension when you learn to command without noise, influence without obvious effort, and maintain advantage through superior planning rather than superior force. This isn't about manipulating others. It's about creating clarity in your own mind that naturally translates to clarity in your environment. If you recognize the difference between those playing checkers and those playing chess in your own life, write strategic foresight in the comments. Let's examine how mastering yourself becomes the foundation for all external achievements. This strategic perspective naturally leads us to what might be the most fundamental truth on the path to exceptional achievement. You must master yourself before attempting to master anything external. Consider this revelation that few ever truly internalize. The rarest form of power isn't influence over others. It's complete sovereignty over yourself. While most people remain unconscious slaves to their impulses, constantly reacting to desires for comfort, validation, distraction, and immediate gratification, the truly powerful have developed an internal command center that operates above these basic drives. The watershed moment in personal development comes when you recognize that every internal weakness, every unchecked emotional reaction, every undisciplined habit, every unconscious need for approval creates a doorway through which others can manipulate you. Your transformation begins not by controlling your environment, but by controlling your responses to it. The journey toward mastery isn't about perfection. It's about awareness and deliberate choice rather than automatic reaction. What makes this inner work so challenging is that it requires confronting what might be called your internal enemy, that part of yourself that constantly seeks the path of least resistance, immediate comfort, and external validation. This confrontation isn't a single event, but an ongoing process of replacing emotional reactivity with disciplined execution, replacing impulsive desire with strategic discipline, and replacing internal chaos with purposeful order. The blueprint for this transformation is deceptively simple. yet profoundly challenging. When others rest, you train. When they distract themselves, you focus. When they surrender to comfort, you embrace necessary discomfort. This isn't about punishing yourself. It's about recognizing that growth happens at the edge of your current capabilities, never within your existing comfort zone. The gap between who you are and who you could become is bridged through this consistent, deliberate practice. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what might be the most overlooked dimension of self-mastery, the disciplined control of your basic appetites. Throughout history, societies have understood that power diminishes through excess. The modern world is architected to encourage overconsumption of food, entertainment, information, pleasure in all its forms, creating a population that's easier to influence and control precisely because they can't control themselves. The revelation that changed my own journey was recognizing that true freedom doesn't come from indulging every desire, but from the ability to say no to yourself. Learning to fuel your body with precision rather than pleasure, to consume information strategically rather than compulsively, to engage with entertainment intentionally rather than escapistically. These seemingly small disciplines create a foundation of self-mastery that radiates into every area of life. Each act of conscious self-denial builds a psychological wall between you and the manipulation that targets human weakness. The momentary discomfort of delaying gratification or choosing the harder path creates a muscle of self-determination that strengthens with every repetition. This isn't about deprivation for its own sake. It's about recognizing that the ability to govern yourself is the prerequisite for any meaningful achievement or influence. The ancient Stoics understood this principle. The person who needs nothing is ultimately freer than the person who has everything but is controlled by those needs. Your journey toward personal power accelerates dramatically when you recognize which of your appetites and attachments are actually invisible chains, limiting your freedom of action and clarity of thought. If you've experienced the strange power that comes from saying no to something you strongly desire, write self-command in the comments. Let's explore how emotional stability becomes your greatest weapon in a world designed to provoke reaction. This self-mastery leads us to a crucial distinction that separates those who achieve lasting power from those who remain perpetually reactive, learning to use emotions as tools rather than being dominated by them. Consider this revelation that transformed my understanding of emotional intelligence. Emotions themselves aren't the problem. It's our relationship with them that determines whether they empower or enslave us. Anger, when channeled precisely, becomes righteous determination rather than destructive rage. Fear, when acknowledged but not obeyed, transforms into heightened awareness rather than paralysis. Pride, when properly understood, is revealed as a mask that blinds you to necessary growth rather than a source of strength. The breakthrough comes when you learn to feel everything deeply, the full spectrum of human emotion, while expressing selectively and strategically. The extraordinary individuals throughout history who maintained influence through tumultuous times mastered this rare ability, maintaining mental stillness while chaos erupts around them. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about developing the internal architecture that allows you to experience emotions without being possessed by them. The world will inevitably test you with temptation, rejection, betrayal, and loss. Your power lies not in avoiding these experiences, but in enduring without reaction, observing without attachment. This emotional mastery connects directly to what might be your most precious resource in the modern landscape, your attention. We live in an economy that literally profits from your distraction. Every app, platform, and entertainment channel is meticulously designed to capture and monetize fragments of your focus. The revelation that changed everything for me was understanding that my attention isn't just something I give, it's the primary resource from which all my achievements would emerge. Guard your focus like the precious gold it is. Every hour wasted on mindless consumption, reactive social media scrolling, or unfocused activity feeds mediocrity, while every hour of deliberate, focused effort builds excellence. The blueprint for transformation isn't complicated. Set clear goals that genuinely matter to you. Execute the necessary work in silence rather than announcing your intentions, and review your progress with merciless honesty rather than comforting self-deception. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what might be the most overlooked truth about personal mastery. It isn't achieved once and then possessed forever. It must be maintained and deepened daily. The strongest individuals prevail not through occasional heroic efforts, but through consistent, unglamorous repetition. Your mission never ends, and the moment you relax your standards, the world begins reclaiming your potential. This daily discipline isn't punishment, it's liberation. When you become your own commander, holding yourself to the highest standard regardless of external monitoring or validation, you develop a self-sufficiency that becomes unshakable. The journey toward exceptional achievement isn't a sprint or even a marathon. It's a lifestyle built on choices so consistent they become your identity rather than merely your actions. Behind the scenes of every overnight success is this hidden infrastructure of daily disciplines, small, consistent actions that compound over time into extraordinary results. The secret isn't in finding the perfect system, but in showing up with unwavering commitment to your practice, especially when motivation fades and only discipline remains. If you've experienced the power that comes from maintaining a daily discipline that others consider optional, write daily power in the comments. Let's explore how understanding human psychology becomes the ultimate leverage in creating the life you want. This daily discipline naturally extends to understanding what might be the most sophisticated dimension of personal power, mastering the subtle art of psychological warfare. This isn't about manipulation or harm. It's about recognizing that the greatest victories rarely require brute force. Often, they simply need patience and the wisdom to let others defeat themselves through their own impulsiveness, reactivity, and lack of strategic thinking. The battlefield that matters most isn't external. It begins in the mind. To dominate psychologically is to win without lifting a finger, to shape outcomes through understanding rather than force. The revelation that transformed my own approach was recognizing that human behavior follows predictable patterns when you understand the emotional undercurrents driving it. Every interaction becomes a form of chess once you learn to read not just what's happening on the surface, but the psychological movements beneath. Study human behavior not as an abstract academic exercise, but as practical intelligence that allows you to predict and influence outcomes in every domain of life. This understanding reveals a counterintuitive truth. Influence begins not by focusing on human strength, but by comprehending human weakness. Most people are surprisingly predictable because they're primarily emotional rather than logical in their decision-making. When you can anticipate emotional responses, you can essentially predict behavior, sometimes better than people can predict themselves. The blueprint for this mastery is deceptively simple. Speak less and listen more intentionally. Every word someone says reveals something unintentional about their vulnerabilities, priorities, and blind spots. The mind shift that creates immediate advantage is approaching conversations not as opportunities to express yourself, but as opportunities to gather intelligence. Behind the scenes of every masterful interaction is this hidden dimension of awareness, watching, listening, and cataloging information that others freely give away without realizing its value. While others compete to be heard, you gain power by truly hearing. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the critical importance of patient observation before action. This is where transformation truly happens, in the discipline of withholding immediate response and instead paying meticulous attention to tone, hesitation, eye contact, posture, and all the non-verbal signals that constitute the majority of human communication. People inevitably reveal who they truly are if you remain silent long enough. Their masks slip, their carefully constructed personas falter, and their authentic emotions surface. They unconsciously expose their triggers, their insecurities, their desires, and once you understand these, you gain natural control over the interaction. This isn't about manipulation, it's about clarity. The master never needs to force outcomes or bully others into compliance. They simply guide with subtle precision, creating paths of least resistance toward mutually beneficial outcomes. When you understand what truly motivates someone, their fears, hopes, insecurities, and ambitions, you can align your proposals with their deeper needs rather than fighting against them. The journey toward exceptional influence begins with this fundamental shift, from reacting to observing, from talking to listening, from assuming to understanding. The most powerful people in any room are rarely those speaking the loudest. They're the ones watching most carefully, gathering information while others freely give it away. If you've experienced the strange advantage that comes from observing carefully while others rush to action, write "patient power" in the comments. Let's explore how emotional stability becomes your greatest weapon in a world designed to provoke reaction. This patient observation directly empowers what might be your greatest asset in any interaction: emotional stability. The hidden truth that few ever master is that controlling your own reactions is the prerequisite for influencing any external circumstance. When you reach the point where others cannot make you angry, they cannot manipulate you through that anger. When they cannot make you flinch, they cannot intimidate you into poor decisions. The revelation that changed everything for me was recognizing that my composure, that steady, unshakable calm, becomes their greatest frustration, and my measured responses create chaos in their strategic calculations. Behind the scenes of every powerful negotiation, confrontation, or high-stakes interaction is this fundamental principle: emotional stability functions as your most reliable weapon. Not aggression, not force, not even intelligence, but the simple ability to remain centered when everyone else is losing their equilibrium. This stability isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about processing them internally before choosing your response, rather than allowing the emotion to choose it for you. The journey toward personal mastery accelerates dramatically when you learn to maintain this emotional steadiness, not just in comfortable situations, but especially under pressure, criticism, or direct attack. The transformation happens when what once triggered an immediate emotional reaction now triggers curiosity, analysis, and strategic thinking instead. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what might be the most sophisticated form of influence: planting ideas rather than issuing commands. The mind shift that creates immediate leverage is learning to influence through implication and suggestion rather than direct orders or explicit requests. This subtle approach allows others to adopt your desired outcomes as their own original thinking, creating ownership and enthusiasm no external pressure could generate. People naturally defend ideas they believe are their own with a passion and persistence they would never invest in someone else's vision. When you master the art of making others believe your goal is actually their idea, they'll champion your objectives thinking they're serving their own interests. This isn't manipulation, it's understanding how human psychology naturally works and using that understanding to create alignment rather than resistance. The blueprint for this approach involves asking targeted questions rather than making statements, seeding concepts and allowing others to develop them, and genuinely incorporating their input so they feel authentic ownership. When someone reaches the conclusion you've been guiding them toward but feels they arrived there independently, you've achieved the highest form of influence. This sophisticated influence connects directly to a principle that might initially seem counterintuitive, strategically concealing your true intent. Consider how differently people behave when they think they've figured out your objectives versus when you remain an enigma. When your real goals stay hidden beneath layers of misdirection, you maintain freedom of movement that transparency would eliminate. The individual who cannot be easily read cannot be effectively countered. This concealment isn't about deception for its own sake. It's about strategic advantage. Even acts of kindness and generosity should have calculation behind them, not in a manipulative sense, but in understanding their strategic value. Loyalty, similarly, should be given selectively to those who demonstrate through actions that they serve your greater purpose, rather than distributed freely without discernment. If you've noticed how your calm composure in a heated moment completely changes the dynamic of an interaction, write "emotional mastery" in the comments. Let's explore how strategic patience becomes the ultimate advantage in this concealed intent naturally connects to what might be one of the most powerful advantages in any competitive landscape: strategic patience. The revelation that transformed my understanding of influence was recognizing that time itself becomes your ally when you resist the universal impulse to act prematurely. Consider this hidden truth. In nearly every interaction, the person who reveals their position first immediately surrenders advantage. By letting others reveal their plans, intentions, and desires before you act, you gain crucial intelligence that informs your every move. Time is the ultimate strategist. Those who rush inevitably expose weaknesses that patience would have protected. The blueprint for this approach is deceptively simple, yet remarkably effective. Wait longer than feels comfortable, observe more thoroughly than seems necessary, prepare more meticulously than appears reasonable, then strike when least expected. The element of surprise carries disproportionate power, creating confusion and disorientation that no amount of raw force could generate. The watershed moment in my journey came when I realized that timing matters more than technique in virtually every domain of life. The right action at the wrong time often fails, while even an imperfect action at the perfect moment succeeds. This patient precision isn't procrastination. It's strategic advantage crystallized into action. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what might be the most misunderstood dimension of personal power: the strategic use of perception. The uncomfortable truth is that influence isn't evil when used for legitimate advancement and protection. You aren't here merely to please the world, you're here to outthink it, to navigate it effectively rather than being manipulated by its currents. While the masses remain ruled primarily by emotion and impulse, making them predictable and easily influenced, you operate through analysis and deliberate intent. When you learn to weaponize perception, controlling how others interpret your actions and motivations, you create a strange phenomenon. People respect and follow you without fully understanding why. This isn't manipulation for its own sake. It's recognition that perception often matters more than reality in human interaction. The journey toward exceptional achievement requires this clear-eyed understanding of social dynamics without becoming cynical or exploitative. This strategic use of perception naturally extends to perhaps the most distinctive characteristic of those who create lasting impact: thinking years ahead, while others remain trapped in day-to-day reactivity. Strategy is the language of achievement, the vocabulary that separates extraordinary outcomes from mediocre ones. The average person lives primarily responding to whatever appears directly in front of them, while the strategic mind plays several moves ahead, seeing potential, futures that remain invisible to others. The transformation happens when you begin seeing the entire field, while others fixate on single pieces. Every word you speak, every silence you maintain, every alliance you form becomes a calculated move toward your long-term vision rather than a reaction to immediate circumstances. This expanded time horizon doesn't just change your decisions, it changes your entire relationship with possibility. If you've noticed how your willingness to delay gratification while working toward a larger vision has created advantages others can't access, write strategic horizon in the comments. Let's examine how becoming the creator of opportunity, rather than merely its recipient, transforms your entire relationship with success, world obsessed with immediate results. This journey we've explored together reveals a fundamental truth that few ever fully grasp. Your most significant achievements will emerge not from obsessing over others, but from relentlessly focusing on your own evolution. The path to becoming truly exceptional is paradoxical. You must retreat inward to expand your outward impact. You must build in silence to eventually be heard clearly above the noise. What separates those who merely dream from those who transform reality is this disciplined focus on self-mastery rather than external validation. They understand that real power isn't measured by who's watching, but by who they're becoming when no one is. If something in this conversation resonated deeply with you, if you recognize patterns in your own life where focusing on others has diminished your progress, simply write, "I choose myself," in the comments below. That simple declaration becomes a powerful first step toward recalibrating your focus. I create these conversations because I've witnessed firsthand how transformative these principles can be when actually applied, rather than merely understood. If you found value here, consider subscribing to join our community of people committed to mastering themselves rather than manipulating circumstances. Hit that subscribe button below. And if this message spoke to something within you, that quiet tap on the like button is your silent acknowledgement of the path ahead. It's not about boosting metrics, it's about recognizing truth when you encounter it. There's a video right here about transforming obstacles into opportunities that complements today's exploration perfectly. It examines how the greatest achievers throughout history used strategic adversity to build unprecedented strength. Click and continue this journey with me over there, because the conversation we've started here is just the beginning of what's possible when you finally choose to focus on yourself until they can't ignore you.